Okay, we are just days away from the beginning of the NASCAR season 2023, the Daytona 500. Can't wait. All the buildup is almost finished. You've got the duels tonight. We'll talk a little bit about that. But this show is mostly, of course, about the Daytona 500. And every week, in case you haven't been here before, we are going to break down the races in the NASCAR Cup Series, odds, trends, track history, all sorts of updated headlines, anything that you need for fantasy, and of course for wagering on the races for the NASCAR Cup Series. This is where you want to go. I promise you, you're not going to get better information anywhere online, including of course YouTube. Let's welcome in our top analyst, and he is going to be here once again all season long. And that is Mr. Eric Smith from RaceReviewOnline.net. How's it going, Eric?
Good. Another season almost here. And then it seems like we were just talking about the Clash a few weeks ago, and then we talked about it just seems like we were at Phoenix. So right back at Daytona. I think this is, 37 of the next 38 weeks?
Wow.
There'll be a NASCAR race. So
Hey, where's Daytona, man? I don't see it behind you.
Not there yet. It's I'm coaching my oldest basketball team, so it's tournament time, so I can't abandon them yet. So I'm gonna get that. Hopefully, get us a win, and I can break away. And then Final Four is next Tuesday, so I'll be back by then.
Oh, okay.
So we got to win first. If you lose, you're out. And I kind of a little bit of history, a little quick side note. The district that we play at, they're one of those that's like, man, they go overboard, and for this championship, we're third grade, mind you, third, fourth, fifth, and you get in the middle school. But the championship games, they air on their sports network on their YouTube channel, like announcers, full-blown graphics. So,
pretty cool.
Of course, it's actually really neat. We play this championship at the high school. So my third grader, when I got roped into coaching this, I just went to take him evaluations, and there's 83 kids in this league, and they only have 4 coaches that needed some help. So I did it. So my third grader was pretty pumped about that, and he was like, "Hey!" When he heard that, his ears perked up when we were in that coaches meeting doing our draft, and he heard about that YouTube, and he was like, "Dad, you got to make sure we get there."
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, "I'll coach you, but you better hit your shots.
Yeah.
I can only do so much. I'm not playing." So first round starts this weekend, or in this week. So if we win, because we're already in the what do you call it, the 8, we're already in there.
When's the Final Four again?
Next Tuesday.
Okay.
So and then the champ, we're almost there. We got to do 2 wins, and we're going to be playing on TV here in Indiana. So
that's huge.
I felt So I felt bad abandoning them. As a head coach, probably should be a good dad.
No, I don't think
leader.
so. No.
Yeah, I should have just leave. All right, guys, well, I'm going to head out. So you're going to be without your coach the first game. If you win, I'll be back for the Final Four. If you lose, it's nice knowing that maybe I'll draft you.
That's not a good lesson to learn.
No, not for third grade. So yeah, we're having a decent season. So,
hey, in the meantime, why don't you look for the virtual background? That's something that put the virtual background on there. And while you're looking for the virtual background, this is a good time to let everybody know too that last year we started late in the season. We started being able to provide the option for viewers to donate to the channel. And we did receive some donations, and we are definitely hoping we can receive them again. And that's on the thanks icon on the bottom of the screen. You click that, you can get anywhere. You can send us anywhere from $2 up. I think it's $50 right now is the max. And just so you know, the donations are going to be for. We're going to use that money. And matter of fact, what we're going to even think of doing is targeting sometime soon a location for Eric to go to that maybe he's not already thinking of going to. So that's something that we're going to be working on. And it's also going to be, if you look at the fact that what we did last year compared to what we're doing this year, the additional programming is also coming into place, and the equipment for going out on location, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to see us, really improve everything that we're trying to do here, and we're going to get help from YouTube ads and from other sources. But if you guys want to be a part of that, then that gives you the opportunity. So, of course, this year we're going to have IndyCar coverage on reports before every race with Eric. And then CJ is going to do his coverage for F1. Can't wait to have CJ start that. And actually, that's going to start next week because CJ's going away. And he won't be around for the first week of the F1 season, so he's going to kind of do a combined kind of report for F1 next week. So anyway, all that additional coverage is definitely what we're trying to provide here for you guys, the viewers. And anything you could help us out, that would be awesome. And that's what the thanks icon is for. So wow, you got the big Daytona logo. So no track.
Yeah, we went big. We'll go Daytona right now, and then next week we'll go back to track
next week. Okay.
Yep. Since we got the big race, we'll have a big logo.
All right, sounds good.
We'll
I'll buy that.
Plus, there's no this one. I know we don't have to worry about any like trademarking stuff. I'll look because it's just the Daytona 500. There is no. We should have to, but just in case.
We're part of the media as it is. We're actually part of the media. So there's a lot of YouTubers.
We got access to all that stuff. Yep.
So.
Yep, we got the NASCAR media site access. We got use of all that. So just IndyCar. Yep. Just while quickly on the site and didn't want to risk anything like this one at least. That's know we're good at.
All right. Now we were gonna do a lot of what we did last year as far as the process with the picks and the odds and all that kind of stuff. And by the way, I should mention too, definitely if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. And please like the video if you do like it, and share the video to your friends or anywhere on social media. All that stuff really helps us grow here. And let us know what you think, because that's also important. You have questions, you have comments, anything. Please let us know what you think, and we will answer those questions and maybe even talk about those comments on our show. A few things before we go right into our picks for this week's race. Let's talk about a few other key details. Because we talked about the off-season on our season prediction show. So there's a link in the description area of this show, on this video, in case you missed it. That's on the channel. So we did a whole season preview. We did our fantasy draft. So all of that's already available. But we didn't have time for a few things, and we figured we'd wait until this week. And that includes the fact that, as you can see with the logo, and I already have the logo on the channel too, is that this is the 75th anniversary for NASCAR. So besides it just being a timely kind of, all right, yeah, it's a nice number, what is there an importance to it specifically that NASCAR is going to be able to take advantage of it? And is this a good time to talk about the future of NASCAR regarding, whether it's television or anything to improve the sport?
I think so. It's more. It's not on a big scale of what you think, but it's unfortunately they probably missed it a little bit. They maybe should have debuted the next gen in the 75th season because you can correlate it to the past and the future. So we're kind of in the second year of the next gen. Nothing really changed major wise to it. But it's kind of you honor the past. You'll go back, like, I know NASCAR is going to be like the 75 greatest drivers. The NBA's done that when they're 50 and 75, and NFL's done that. So NASCAR is going to do it as they should. Why not build that up? So it's kind of honoring the past, and you're looking at the current, and then obviously got the next gen and the future of where NASCAR has evolved all 75 years from kind of the moonshine, southern backwoods racing from the law to it's becoming we're nationwide and now global.
Well, it's not even. It's not becoming. I mean, it is. There's nothing. There's no. Yeah. I mean, the only way that you can find any remnants of that past history is you got to go to the races. That's it.
Yep. You feel it. Yep. That's because it used to be, even in the late 80s, early 90s, it was still predominantly Southeastern-based sport. And that's where the fans, I've been saying this for years, even as they've grown away from there, that's still your core fan base. And that is NASCAR. When you go, I've been asked what NASCAR race, I've never been, where should I go? Obviously Daytona is the number one. But if you haven't been, you can't go to Daytona, or maybe that's too far for you, my recommendation, go to somewhere in the Southeast. That's where you're really going to feel NASCAR. You're going to see the tailgates. You're going to see the history of the track. Because a lot of these tracks have been revamped, but there's still some old school feel to it. Like North Wilkesboro is going to be back for the All-Star race. You got Darlington, Atlanta, Richmond, Martinsville. I mean, you still have the as I call the blue bloods for the track wise, and NASCAR, that's where they kind of congregated for decades. And then when Jeff Gordon came on the scene, it kind of sparked NASCAR to a national brand, and they branched out, and it went from basically a Southeast to we're up in New York, they're out in California, they're in the Midwest more. So NASCAR's evolved, and that's where they are. And they were really mainstream for a while, and then they struggled kind of gaining that traction because it became a fad. You lose fans. It's natural. That's going to happen. It's going to be the cool thing to do. And now you can kind of feel it again. You can kind of feel it coming back. You can feel it crescendoing up. I mean, this 500 is sold out, and you can't, again, you're going to have 8 consecutive sellouts, but what makes this year different, you cannot get a ticket. You cannot get, in the past, like I still want to go, I'll go sit in the infield, I'll go buy a fan zone. Sold out. You cannot go. So much so Daytona is basically saying, hey, we'd love to have you. We can't this year. Here's our 2024 date. Lock in a spot now.
Well, do you think a lot of that had to do with how good the racing was last year?
I do. I don't think it hurts. And I feel like for years after, and we talked about this on the show a few years ago, when Jimmy Johnson walked away, and Gordon and Stewart and Earnhardt Jr. and all these Danica, polarizing drivers they've always had, NASCAR struggled to market this next wave. It's like, well, who is it? People weren't wearing their gear. Like, you go to a track and you'd see Gordon gear, Earnhardt gear, Junior gear, and Rusty Wallace and Dale Jarrett. You'd have that all. Then you just lost it. There wasn't that driver. Now, I think people are gravitating back again. Chase Elliott has done a great job.
There's a lot of young drivers to choose from.
There are, and they're not as vanilla as they were when NASCAR was trying to be corporate, boardroom, Fortune 500. Don't say anything dumb. I think now it's kind of getting to the rivalries. I mean, hell, AJ Allmendinger punted Chase Briscoe of all people in the Clash practice. I mean, it's like they're not as buttoned up as they used to be.
And Ty Gibbs is going to definitely bring
Ty Gibbs, Noah Gragson, polarizing young guys that people at NASCAR is getting back to getting them in the limelight again. Let's see these guys on the Today Show or Fox and Friends and all that kind of, let's get them out there to where people know who these guys are, not just here in February, but they know them all year. Because this is the big event. This is going to get the attention. They've always struggled in the past is you come up with this rise and it's just all downhill from there. Well, how do they sustain that? Because it's going to be a natural drop, but how do you minimize that drop and sustain it? And they've done a better job.
To sustain it, you got to keep the racing going the way it was last year. You have to. And you have to eliminate some of the racetracks where there were issues. And speaking of that, which ones were the biggest issues, and how much longer do we have to deal with those tracks? Texas is one of them?
Texas is one of them. That was probably the worst. I maintain the last few. That's the worst track on the schedule. I'm glad they cut from 2 races to 1, and they kind of had the All-Star race, and like we got to get us far away from this place for the All-Star race because it's a dud there. I don't know how. Honestly, they got a new president there. We'll see what happens because Fontana, we'll talk about next week. They're going from a 2-mile track down to like a Martinsville, like a high bank Martinsville is what they're going to go to. When does Texas have to change? When do they finally realize, like, this track is terrible?
They're just going to go back this year, and right now they have plans on doing the same thing next year? Come on. You got to be kidding me.
Eventually you have to. And NASCAR's made it clear, if you're going to host a race, we need a certain percentage of tickets sold. And if you got a bunch of empty seats and you can't fill them year after year, guess what? You're off because somebody else is sitting there wanting on. That's why do you think Charlotte has hey, we can't have the same race twice. You got the 600. There's no sense to come back and run another oval in the fall. Maybe let's change it up and do the Roval. It worked. Bristol. Oh, they're eliminating dates. This spring crowd hasn't been the greatest. Let's try dirt. Let's try something because we could lose it. Well, I think we saw on Easter that it was the best ratings that spring race has had in decades. The attendance was up. So you've got to evolve. You've got to adapt. Nobody wants to see the same track with the same race twice. So Texas has now lost. at least having the All-Star date, you still had the gates are open twice. They're down to one race weekend. Granted, it's a playoff race, but because of contract, it's why it's in the playoffs.
That's the worst thing, is it's a playoff race. I mean, that's terrible.
It is. So that's got to get fixed. Short tracks and road courses. Those were duds last year with this next gen. I know they're trying, but we'll see what happens.
Whatever you do not change the car for the road courses. Just don't do it. I don't know how they're going to do it. They can figure out other ways.
And I'm thinking too that might spice up the road course, because we all know road courses are not the easiest to pass on. There's a reason they're built that way. They're not built for stock cars. They're usually built for sports cars and Indy cars, not for a big heavy stock car on it. However, I think by eliminating the stage cautions there are going to spice those shows back up, because now you're talking strategy. That's what road courses are. That's what makes Indy cars so compelling, is these guys are all different strategies, because you never know if that caution can fall. And if you've already pitted, but you're not a lap down, and you haven't, it flips the field. So I think that will naturally spice up the road course. Now you're just down to the short tracks. Those weren't that great last year. We all know that. Phoenix championship race, Martinsville, the round of 8. Chastain doesn't make that move. I think we're probably sitting there talking about, well, that was a dud of an end of the season. That was kind of a predictable
anticlimactic. Yep.
So those are kind of the main things, is what they can use. Everywhere else, it used to be 1.5 miles were the worst tracks. Those are duds. It was the same guys winning. Now those are arguably the better races. So I think they're on their way. They're doing the right thing. And great, I wasn't expecting the next year, the first year, to come out and just set the world ablaze, and it almost did. I mean, we're only talking about a very minor issue.
Well, when you compare it to where we were, I mean, it was a grand slam last year. So.
Yep. So, and then the parity, I mean, I've seen people talk about it online. We talked about it in our show last week. We do think parity is going to stay. Do I think we're going to see 19 winners? No, but you'll still see several. And I think you look at, if you just tell somebody, hey, give me 16 playoff drivers, good luck. Because there's probably 20 or 25 that are very well, nobody like, I don't think he'll make it. It's now down to winning, that's what NASCAR's wanted. And so I think that's a good thing. And I think that goes in line with, we had a couple free agent signings this week with Bowman and Suarez. Granted, free agents saying they didn't leave teams. They stayed with their teams, but they were free agents at season end. And I think the parity might have been a reason why they signed. Daniel Suarez, you got to rewind to last August. In Daytona, mind you, he signed a 1-year extension. And people are like, why would you only sign a 1-year extension? Like, you're having a career year. Why not bank off that and get you finally some job security? Why would you do 1 year? But he was taking a chance on himself. Like, I think I can do better. Well, there's a lot of seats that are opening. Harvick, we know, is retiring. Truex could retire. He's still up in the air. Denny Hamlin's a free agent, and FedEx is rumored to not be coming back, so you never know what's going to happen there. So, and I think that combined with the parity, because if you're Suarez, you finally got a win, and you finished 10th in points last year. What if you don't win this year, but the parity stays? Now you're not even a playoff driver. What do you think your market value is at that point? It plummets. And Trackhouse can be like, hey, you're a flash in the pan 1 year, but you might. So I think he was looking at job security, because why else would you sign a contract before the season even starts? Alex Bowman, he's had to hear the rumor, like, oh, this guy doesn't deserve this seat. He's the weakest link at Hendrick. Hey, he flukes into wins. Well, free agent, Ally stayed. He made the right choice. Let's just stay. So why even test that market? But the key to this is, the other determining factor in all this, the TV money. There's a contract being negotiated, and the teams are trying to get a bigger piece of this pie. Right now, the tracks get a huge chunk of the pie, and the teams are like, look, the tracks in NASCAR are kind of one and the same. Why are you taking all this and you're leaving us this? We want a bigger piece, because if we can get a bigger piece, our teams are not driven by who brings the most money. It is now driven, we can pay them the money. That's part of the charters. We got this far. Now let's take that one final step to where we have the money here. It doesn't matter what sponsorship you bring.
That's key. Yep.
So with that said, the salaries are going to naturally could go higher, significantly higher if you go that route. So if you're signing a multi-year deal now, you're kind of selling yourself short, because this will start not next year, the year after. So if you sign a 1-year deal, you kind of lock yourself back in, like, all right, I'm going to stay another year, but then that next contract, But if you sign a multi-year deal, you're not going to kind of reap the benefits of that next contract because you're already going to be locked in.
Well, you're only locked in for a year.
These are multi-year deals that Suarez and Bowman
But I mean, but that means that what does it mean? So it's at least 2 years, or is it more than 2 years?
Bowman's through 26. Suarez, they said they didn't. It's kind of in-house what they did on.
So Bowman's got 3 years. Okay.
Yeah. So you got to think, that means 2025, technically, let's say he goes out and let's say he makes the round of 12 this year, next year, round of 8 championship 4 type driver. Well, in 25, he'd be commanding millions. Like, okay, he should get Chase Elliott money. Look what he's doing. He's there. But he sold himself short because he signed. Because these teams are probably like, look, I'm going to offer you a lower deal to stay longer.
We don't know how much he made.
That's the one thing I wish NASCAR would do, and racing in general, not just NASCAR. I want to know football, basketball, hockey. They signed a 3-year, $60 million deal. We don't know that with racing. I think that would intrigue things. And like you said, you've been saying this for years. They need to have a free agent period. Let's make some more storylines and noise by this free-for-all sign whenever you want, leave whenever you want. Because I think the people want to see the terms, and I think people will be surprised how little these guys actually make compared to what they should be making.
Yeah, but that has to stop. You can no more of this free agency period during the season. It's just stupid. Yeah. It has to stop.
Well, especially with Reddick last year signing, going to 23-11 for 24, and then come out, he's actually there now. And
it's no good.
It's too confusing. No, and I like the free agency period before the season started. Hey, these two are locked up because now it just complicates things. We talked to Truex about that last year. He didn't hit the ground running until he finally solidified as, hey, I am going to come back. I will be back next year. And then that team got better. Well, aren't they in the same spot right now? And what's that do to Gibbs? Because I've said that a lot, is they lost Mars and all that sponsorship, the candy company, which forced Kyle out. What if Truex retires? Bass Pro Shops has already got a really good relationship with Richard Childress and Austin Dillon. If Truex walked, why on earth would they come back to sponsor 2 cars and they can just, hey, we're going to cut back a little bit to sponsor this car. We don't need 2. The only reason they're on 2 is they have a long-standing relationship with Truex. So if he walks, Bass Pro Shops probably walks. What if FedEx doesn't come back with Denny Hamlin? What if FedEx is like, hey, because I heard they're out. What does Gibbs do then? That's 3 major sponsors you would have lost in 2 years. They might have to cut back. That might affect other jobs. So that's why I feel like they have a lot to look at the start of this year for that camp. So how much does that noise get in their way?
Again, we talked about it last year. Just to imagine one of those drivers not having a sponsor, not having a car. Yeah. It's not good. It doesn't make any sense. It's old NASCAR. They need to change it. And I know it's because of money, and NASCAR is doing everything they can to hold on to as much of it as they can, but they have to have foresight. They have to look into the future. And if it means take a little less now for the growth of the sport, do it. You have to figure it out. And look, it's going to change. There's no way 15 years from now this is still the same system. It has to change. So just do it now. Get it over with as soon as possible.
Well, because it used to be that way. NASCAR guys used to make millions upon millions upon millions. And even now these veterans, when they started out, were making all this money. And like Kyle Busch kept saying last year, his next contract, he's like, I'm going to have to take less. At this time, he was the only multi-time champion in the garage for the Cup Series. And he's saying, I'm a free agent, and in order for me to come back, not only do I have to take less, they're asking me to bring a sponsor. Yeah. He lost a ride, a 2-time champion, a 60-race winner. Nobody will deny Kyle Busch's talent. And one of the top teams is basically saying, we lost the sponsor. You need to take a lot less and bring a sponsor, or you don't have a seat. That's where we were. That'd be like, Grant, we all know LeBron James is not winning as many games as he used to, but he still can score. Can you imagine the Lakers saying, you're probably the only player on this team that can score. I know we're not very good, but you personally are still a top talent. I'm going to cut you next year if you don't take far less money, and I need you to bring a sponsor to our team, or we don't have a spot for you. Can you imagine doing that? And oh, by the way, if you don't come, I've got a rookie here that has never played in the NBA. He's going to take your spot and start. Like, it doesn't make sense. But that's where the market is right now. So that's why the teams are saying, this new TV deal, we're going to get more money on it. Let's spread the money to the
By the
teams.
way, what would the TV deal, what networks? Are we still talking about the same networks?
They're bidding, I think ESPN, ABC wants back in.
Okay.
And I heard Amazon is one of the streams.
Right.
So you've got 4 bidding, and NASCAR wants to keep it the 2, split and split. And a lot of people have wondered, I don't know if I've ever talked about this on here. I found this out last year of why does NASCAR go against the NFL in the fall? Why would you lose? Because if you look, the Fox ratings are a lot bigger than the NBC ratings, and they're probably 4 million now, and about 2 to 3 million in the fall. People are like, why would you do that to yourselves? You should have. But NASCAR and NBC side is, well, we can't just punt on coverage during NFL. Like, we know fan bases are going to watch CBS and Fox. We know that for NFL. The 1 and 4 o'clock markets, they're always going to. But if you're NBC,
what do you have?
We don't. We don't want to air infomercials. NASCAR is the next best because baseball's wrapped up, hockey hasn't started yet, basketball hasn't started yet. NASCAR, if you can pull 2 million people against the NFL, hey, that's great because we can still add revenue. We can keep the ground running. So ESPN and ABC has seen that, and they're like, well, wait a minute, we could still get that 2 to 3 million range for the playoffs. We want in. So now you're bidding against each other. And then the front half, you got the Daytona 500 available. So therefore, everybody's saying that's why NASCAR is like, our money, our value is going up. I know the ratings aren't what they used to be, but because of streaming possibilities and ratings across the board and everything's down, it's because of the streaming part of it. But NASCAR still 2 to 3 million people per race in the fall is a very good, strong number. That there's networks out there that are saying we're not going to fight against the NFL, but if I can get that piece of that pie, look how much money I could sell to these ads, which that only boosts our network. So the teams know it. Hey, look, you're getting more money. Can we get a bigger piece of this pie, and we can all be together? So it's a win-win. It's good for the sport.
All right. So one more thing before we kind of go into this 500 race. Any changes that need to be made, and we know they do, because of the car, the new car. Maybe there were some issues with safety. Now, I don't think it was purposeful, but you just had to play out the season and see what didn't work. And there were some little safety improvements that NASCAR needed to make. Did they make those?
They tried. Upon for effort, they tried. It's still not good enough. It's that rear bumper. And we noticed that last year. Kurt Busch and Alex Bowman kind of looked like innocent hits. Back end didn't look like a hard hit, but that bumper was so stiff that the driver felt all that contact. And I know we look at that he barely hit the wall. But can you imagine your street car backing into a wall on the highway 100 miles an hour? Sure. It's going to hurt. Those guys, they felt that impact, and that's caused the issue. So NASCAR in the offseason, and they've been testing to soften it up. They wanted to make a car durable so when you hit, you could keep going. Hey, it didn't mess that car up as bad. Look, it's still good. Well, it's not absorbing the energy. And when a car crunches, and a lot of people see a heavy crash and sheet metal bending and flying everywhere, that's by design. Yes. That's because that car absorbed the impact and not the driver. Well, when it's stiff, it's the other way around. So they're like, let's soften it up. Unfortunately, it's still not soft enough because in the clash, the drivers kept talking about how just the innocent bumper hits that we saw were jarring them. Larson said his jaw hurt. They felt like they were in a boxing match. So it's still not there. If they're getting hurt and feeling it at 80 miles an hour, what's it going to feel like hitting a wall at these much higher speed tracks? So that is a concern, and NASCAR has addressed it. Like, hey, we'll go back to the drawing board and try again. Right now, it is what it is. We're going to go in the Daytona 500. What if somebody backs into a wall in a big one? You just don't know. So that's one area. The second area, NASCAR's experimented with mufflers to kind of quiet it down on the short tracks, which it's neither here nor there. I'm not a huge fan of it, but if it helps the fan base, if that helps them talk, whatever. But where they had it placed in the clash did not work. And what happened was on that Friday or Saturday practice session, when Ty Gibbs' car just abruptly caught on fire, it's because the box that houses the muffler is underneath the car, and it's such a confined box that the muffler wasn't all the way attached right, and it created heat in a small area, created smoke, and it created fire. Some of the drivers were saying that the ones that were installed correctly, that the fumes had nowhere to go but in the car. So there was a lot of carbon monoxide. Some of them had poisoning. And I'm like, oh boy, we're sick. We need to get addressed. And it was because of this muffler. So granted, they're only going to try it. The next one was going to be at the street race in Chicago, probably a Chicago mandated noise thing. So they got some time to figure it out. But the other part is you don't have to do it. You didn't do it last year and there wasn't many issues. So you don't have to. But that was the two main areas right now of concern is the carbon monoxide and that thing spontaneously catching fire in the rear.
Everything's going well with the car, so we just got to keep our fingers crossed that they don't have to do anything to change the car drastically, because that would be the worst thing possible is that.
Well, the only thing, and this will be a segue probably into our Daytona stuff, is the teams are able to submit, hey, you got the first year, Toyota's noticed, hey, we have a deficit to these guys in the wind tunnel. Like, we're not as strong. So NASCAR allowed, and they do this every time you get a new car, is between the season, hey, submit your fixes, how you can improve this car. You submit them all to us, and then we will look at it and be like, you know what, that's going to make you too good, and that's a detriment to them. So they try to keep it even, and all three of them were allowed to update their car. And some of it is the venting on the hood or whatever. But a lot of them said the Fords are going to be strong on these faster tracks. Denny Hamlin even mentioned, hey, the Toyotas don't expect us much in qualifying. Fords are going to dominate. You look at qualifying on Wednesday night. 6 Fords in the top 10. Hendrick's always good there, so I'm not shocked 3 of the 4 Chevys are guys. Fords on super speedways are going to be tough to beat. And they were last year. Remember Daytona? I think they went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in most sections. Did great in the duels. Phenomenal in the 500. Hamlin said they were only going to get better. He feels like they've only improved on these areas. He goes, now, Toyota, we've closed the gap in other areas. He just said super speedways, 2-mile bigger tracks. Fords have an advantage right now. And he called a shot. You look at last night in the qualifying, Toyotas were nowhere really to be found. Fords are all up front, minus the Hendrick guys, and that Hendrick guys dominate qualifying. They're everywhere. They just can't win the 500. The Fords, though, might be scary to watch. And I think qualifying last night kind of proved that.
Well, look, the other thing that they got going for them is they have more cars. But they also have more cars which can crash. So
100%.
And that's what kind of is the equalizer at Daytona. What I'm most worried about is the road courses and how which manufacturer was it that struggled?
Toyota's terrible.
That cannot happen again. That's terrible.
He said that the Toyotas probably are still lacking.
That's
because we know going into these races this year that a top 15 is going to be a win for us. So
I don't know what you do in that situation. I don't know if is that something that is more of, hey, well, nothing we can do about it, Toyota, you're just behind, or is it their hands are tied and there's really nothing that they can do based on the car that they have? Like, why are they so behind?
It's probably aerodynamically an engine. Because you got to think they've done all they can do.
So isn't that not fair?
You adapt. And this is where NASCAR is trying with the manufacturers, the old win on Sunday, buy on Monday mantra with these car dealerships. Is it used to be like, hey, that's a Monte Carlo, that's a Camaro, and they've gone kind of back to that. So Toyotas have a Camry. That is a Camry body. And they obviously made some modifications for a NASCAR. But that Camry is different than the Ford Mustang, which is also different than that Chevrolet Camaro. The Camaro and Mustang must be able to make the torque, the left and right turns, and the aerodynamically better than that Camry probably can on a road course. So if you're Toyota, revamp your Camry, your street car. Maybe that's probably what you do. Maybe there's probably been so many assembled that, hey, we can't revamp it yet, but maybe the 26 model or the 27 model, or maybe we go with the Corolla. Maybe the Corolla is a better version on a road course. That's the kind of stuff they're behind the scenes because they want to make it. If you go to that Toyota dealership and like, this is the same Camry that Denny Hamlin's driving on. Obviously, it's not painted, but so that's what they're trying to do. So I'm wondering if the deficit is the Camry just may not be good on road courses on the left and right turns compared to a Mustang and a Camaro, which very well is probably the way they're kind of talking. It's probably the direction it is, and I feel like there's really not much more we can do. We've done our upgrades. It's just this car. Sometimes you just can't take a car and be good everywhere, and that's their deficit.
Well, that'll be something that we'll definitely remind everybody about when we get to our first road course. So you'll know what to do and what not to do as far as wagering on the race. Yep. And same thing with the Daytona 500, because right off the bat, and might as well also let everybody know that our picks segments each week are now going to be brought to you by PlaybookSports.com. And you can check out Playbook Experts. They have a new YouTube channel. They didn't have it this time last year. They've got legendary handicapper Mark Lawrence, and they're going to be doing a lot of hoops coverage. So if you're into NBA, college basketball, they're going to do a lot of that during the summer before they kick back into football season. I will be doing – Mark Lawrence will be coming over to this channel to do college hoops, March Madness, so there's that. But just want to let everybody – because we are going to, in turn edit our picks segment and post it on their channel too, so that gives us a little bit more exposure on the Playbook Experts channel. So check them out, especially, like I said, if you're a big hoops fan and like to gamble on basketball, pro and college, over the next several months. Now, as we get into it, the strangest, as we take a look at the odds, and I know there's some people out, there's some places, they're all going to differentiate because there were like 3 or 4 drivers. I think when we did it, DraftKings had 4 drivers at 12-1. And some people have said, well, Ryan Blaney's a little bit of a favorite now. But I looked at Bovada, and Kyle Larson is the favorite. Now, we have said this. We said it last year, and we're going to just say it again. And look, maybe one of these years, Kyle Larson will surprise us all, and we'll have pie in our face. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, but because usually you get a little taste of something, and then you go, all right, now I see. Now we'll reference that next time. Very rare that it's all of a sudden you get somebody who's just terrible at a track, and then in one race, boom, goes out and wins. So I don't see that happening. So I'm willing to, and we are all willing to take the pie in the face. Well, I shouldn't say that because for some really weird, strange reason, CJ put Larson on his list. But that's only because CJ is his handicapping strategy is usually, especially in races like this, where there's a lot of luck involved. He goes with, I'm going to take like those first 8 picks, as far as the odds. And if I could break even, I'm going to break even. So Larson's a part of that. But you and I are not going to fall for the Kyle Larson, the Kyle Larson in the tailpipe trick because at Daytona, because he has 5 top 10s in 17 races. Okay, great. He's never had a top 5. He's had 1 top 5 in 16 Talladega races. That's 1 top 5 in 33 races between Talladega and Daytona. He's only led 18 laps in 17 races. Last year, he had engine issues and crashed. And if people are saying, well, look, he's going to start on the front row. That's different. Maybe that's why he's 11-1 instead of 12-1. Maybe that's why he's been on the pole the last 3 races at Daytona and has led 1 lap.
Yeah.
He's no good at Daytona.
No, I would not take it if somebody gave me free money and said, here's $100, keep it, throw on Larson and win. I'll say, take your $100 back.
I'd rather sprinkle it on the 70-1 to 80 to 100-1 long shots.
Kyle Larson, and granted, they'll all eat crow on this, has no shot of winning Sunday. None. I have a better odds of winning Daytona 500 than Kyle Larson. 35 starts if you count Atlanta too last year because that ran like a super speedway. 35 times he is strapped in that car, put the steering wheel on, drove off pit road and raced at Daytona, Talladega, and Atlanta super speedway. He's got one more top 5 than you and I do. One. He was, like you said, 32nd and 37th last year. Do you know the last time? So I hear he's on the front row. You know the last time the guy starting second in the Daytona 500 won the Daytona 500? Starting second? 1993. 1993. So why on God's green earth do they have this guy? He should be 25 or 30 to 1 at best. And they're going off of his name. And then you could say, oh, the Hendrick Motorsports angle. Okay, I hear you. You know they haven't won at Daytona since 2014, right? They can qualify great. They don't ever win. So if I'm going to buy into the Hendrick has fixed their cars on race pace, and they're the ones that are going to win, I'm not going Kyle Larson. I'll go Chase Elliott. I'll go William Byron. I will not go with Kyle Larson. It's just one top 5. Again, he's got one top 5. I keep going with that. There's absolutely no reason he should be those odds. If you put him 30 or 40 to 1 where he should be,
that's different.
Maybe.
I still wouldn't take him, but that's different. Yeah.
No, that is one of the worst picks that you could use is Kyle Larson on a super speedway. Same with Martin Truex Jr. Those two, I have no. Truex, they finally have wisened up with him and moved him down.
And by the way, and that is the reason that I put a few bucks on him, because they moved him down.
Yeah.
And remember too, since we're bringing up Truex, let's see, because he's like now what is he now, 40 to 1? 30 to 1.
30 to 1. He was 18 to 1 for the Coke Zero 400. So they finally moved him back.
So if you look at it, last year he actually led 11 laps in the Daytona 500 and finished in the top 10 in the Coke Sugar 400. And let's keep in mind, he does have 2 runner-ups, including the 2016 Daytona 500. And he had, which is we've repeatedly talked about anytime we bring up Truex, he actually had a really good Xfinity career at these tracks, including Daytona, which is why it was so surprising he's never been able to like kind of find his groove in the Cup Series here. So at least Truex has something to go on, where now that the odds are good, I'm throwing a few bucks on him, but no way with Larson.
No. And Truex, numerology's on the side. 19 car, February 19th, Daytona 500, 19th Daytona 500 try for him. Makes sense. Numerology's right there for him. However, he's made 73 starts at Daytona, Talladega, and Atlanta, and he's never won. So I still go. That's why he's better off at 30 to 1, where Larson should be, than because for years we'd show up and Truex remarkably was 14 to 1, 18 to 1, 16 to 1. I'm like, why? He's better at 31. He's not a bad play for numerology because, again, like at 30 to 1, you can bet $4 and you win 120, but you're only out $4 if he doesn't. So you're not making as big of a risk as you would with, for some reason, Larson. Even yesterday at 12 to 1. It helped us out by him being on the front row. I'm like, thank you. That is great. Kyle Larson qualified on the front row.
Keeping in mind, again, Daytona's a luck race. We just talked about it with the Toyota situation. So look, if things work out and there's only 11 cars left because if there's wrecks all over the place and he happens to be sitting there in a great position and winds up, somehow miraculously finishing in the top 5 or by God wins the race, that's the only way. It's got to be some luck. There's, he's better off 100 to 1 guy that has won these races. That's how I would compare him to.
Yep. And it helped out too, that Bowman again, front row, and 6 straight front row starts. Here's his finishes while he's been on the front row. Same deal. 17th, 11th, 24th, 35th, 24th. The last time the front row driver got a top 5, the pole sitter got a top 5 in the Daytona 500. The last time a top 5, 2002.
That's crazy.
The last time they won, 2001, Bill Elliott.
That's nuts.
The last time they won, 2000, Dale Jarrett.
And that was my first race.
That was
first race I ever went to.
So you brought the hex for the front row guys. From that point forward, oddly enough, I thought this trend, their stat trend, was weird yesterday when I found this. The last driver to win from the pole was Dale Jarrett in 2000. The last driver to win from second place starter, Dale Jarrett. 1993. He's the last guy in Egypt, and he's long retired. So that's why it actually, for the betting market, Bowman and Larson on the front row only helps us. It only because the betting world doesn't probably fully grasp still Daytona. It's a lot. Like Kyle Busch said yesterday, funny quote he had. He goes to the media center. NASCAR announces a Powerball deal, like sponsorship for the season, and there's scratch-off tickets. And Kyle Busch picked it up. He goes, "I probably have a better shot of winning this than I do the Daytona 500." And he mentioned it's like a lottery now. And with that being said, the handicap, the big ones, don't know the difference. They're still learning NASCAR, so they're going to look at front row and they're going to say, those guys are going to get the best odds. And we're going to say, I'm laughing all the way to the bank, because trends say they're not going to win, and their stats,
that's
just
the key.
General say they're not going to win. So
Bowman's
there's
no
a lot of value.
Bowman, 3 top 10s in 13. Last year, no top 10s. 1 top 5 at Talladega in 14 races. So that's, once again, 1 top 5 in 27 races between the two tracks. So,
and he's 25-1. That just baffles my mind that he's over double the odds of Kyle Larson right now, and he's got similar numbers. And he's on the pole. So
and speaking, and you were saying with his teammates. So, a matter of fact, let's see. We have 5 similar picks between the three of us. So who do you think they are? We have 3 top 3 that are in the reasonable contender area, and 1 mini long shot and 1 big long shot.
I'm going to say Blaney.
Blaney, correct.
Hamlin?
No. I was the only one to not take him.
Bubba?
Yes.
And maybe Kyle? Okay. And then the
last 2.
Longer. LaJoy?
Yes.
The R1?
Yeah, we're not letting LaJoy off anytime we can get 100-1.
I'm going to guess McDowell.
No, you're the only one to take McDowell.
Harvick?
Mm-mm. You're the only one to take Harvick.
It's got to be one of these nights.
It's a 30-1 shot.
Jones? Say Jones? So I was looking for Jones or Almirola. Be one of those two.
So those are those picks that we've all agreed upon. And getting back to Hendrick, so Elliott, you're the only one to not take Elliott. So I took Elliott was actually my last one. I did all my picks, and I realized, hey, I've got a little extra money left. And then that's why I put Elliott in there, or else I would not have taken him. But look, I mean, reasonably, he's got 4 top 10s in his last 5, a couple of runner-ups. That's nice. But average-wise, he's not been particularly great at the track. Yeah, he crashed last year, but led 31 in the Coke race, 10th in the 500. He does have 2 Talladega wins. He's won at Daytona in the Xfinity Series. So he's a good driver, solid, but he hasn't yet elevated himself yet to where he really should be equal to like Blaney or Hamlin. He should be like that next. He should be more like Kyle Busch area.
If he was, I probably would have been more apt to take him. But I looked at he hasn't won there in Cups. I'm like, it's such a fluky race that he doesn't really thrive in those situations. He won Talladega last fall, so I was like, that's the good. He looked good in Atlanta last year in Super Speedway, 10th in the 500. So I'm like, he's there, but is he there for the favorite numbers? That's why I went elsewhere.
The number. Yeah.
Because I looked at his Daytona 500 finishes, and people don't. This is a different race because you're a little more pumped in this one than anyone. It's the big Super Bowl. He hasn't responded in this race. 37th, 14th, 33rd, 17th, 17th, 10th. Those are his finishes. Well, I'm sorry, he had that runner-up in there. But he wasn't runner-up. You got to look at that runner-up on the final lap. It was Kozlowski and Logano, the fiery crash, and Kyle slammed in there, and Cindric slammed. He was probably more back in the top 10, and just everybody wrecked, and he ended up second. So, but if the Hendrick guy is going to win, that's my pick. I feel like yesterday or last night showed a lot with Chase. He was the slowest in qualifying, and I use in quotes, between the Hendrick guys. But don't you just feel like he's got something for the race more than those three? Because it feels like those guys are always
Yeah, I don't.
fast in
That's why
qualifying.
I try not to even get myself involved in any of that pre-500 stuff. It just it never
It's not worth.
it never
Yeah.
computes that much.
No, and they don't have any practice. And like Denny Hamlin mentioned, even the practice session tomorrow on Saturday, he's like, nobody's practicing. He's like, if you're practicing, you're just checking ride height, or you don't have a very good race car and you're trying to make it better. And he goes, so in theory, you don't want to pick those guys anyway. So he said, nobody's really going to practice. So we're kind of going to the race. Nothing's really going to change. So that's why it's easy to make these picks now, because there's nothing that's going to sway our mind between these duels tonight than for the race, because the duels are run at night. There's more grip. It's a different race. It's 60 laps. It's half the field. There's not enough energy to build a second lane. Nobody wants to wreck. They want their Daytona 500 cars. So I just don't think anything you're going to see in the duels is going to be a byproduct of what you're going to see in the 500. It's just So
I'm not really going to pay attention.
That's why I feel like with Elliott, he just, oddly enough, the worst of the 4 Hendrick qualifiers, but I feel like
he's the best. Yeah, out of the 4. Yeah. Because none of us took Byron.
No.
Even though he won the Coke race just a couple years ago.
Yeah, he's decent on super speedways away from Daytona. But then you look at his Daytona's actual finishes, and specifically the Daytona 500, he finished 23rd, he finished 21st, he finished 40th, he finished 26th, 37th, and 38th.
That's not too good.
That to me does not scream 16-1 that I'm like, I'm going to punt on that one.
Yeah, because he's been involved in 6 wrecks out of his 10 starts at Daytona, including his last 3. So he should not be 16-1.
No, even the years he started on the front row, he finished 21st. And you look at in February 14th to 21st, the Valentine's Day, 26th. Even the Coke Zero Sugar 400 that year, 2021, he started second, finished 37th. So it really doesn't matter. Granted, they can show up, he can avoid trouble and have a car to win. He just hasn't proven to get to the end.
That's the thing. Yeah.
So 16-1 again was too steep for me to.
Yeah, and you and I were more the similar, where we kind of stayed away from a lot of the favorites this week. It's just not the week to take favorites, unless you're going to do like CJ and take them all, basically, and just hope that one of them gets your money back. Then you look at Penske, and let's keep in mind, they're basically defending champ. Austin Cindric got the win last year. So you got Logano. Now, I did not take Logano, even though I could totally understand why, again, whether it's he liked him or not, CJ, or it's just part of taking all the favorites. But he was somebody that I was close to taking. It was almost like if I didn't take Elliott, I probably would have taken Logano on the last one, because look, he's been pretty decent there. He's got the 500 win. He has the 3 Talladega wins. But what really ruined it for me with Logano is no top 10s in his last 7. He has led a lot of laps during that stretch, but he's just in a bad luck kind of, and I kind of look at that myself. When I'm looking at these luck races, I tend to stay away from drivers that are in the midst of a bad luck run. And I go with the guys, obviously, that are in a nice run. It's just luck, as Kyle Busch said. It's a big part of it.
100%. I was the same way. That's why I avoided him. Because last year, you just look at last year, just this next-gen car in general, and you throw Atlanta in there. These were his worst tracks by far. And he was 21st at Daytona 500, 9th in the first Atlanta race. Remember, there was chaos and wrecks at the end of that one. 32nd in the first Talladega, 26th in the second Atlanta, 12th in Daytona, the 400, and 27th in the fall Talladega race. And then he was 26th and 27th, respectively, in the pair of Daytona races in 2020, 12th and 23rd in 2021. That doesn't scream race winner to me. And we've seen Logano in the past. We know he's an aggressive driver. He's admitted that. Well, a lot of times that aggression level gets you in trouble in Daytona. So I just didn't trust him at 14-1 again, you got to, like you said, you look at the stats, look at the luck. He doesn't have it. I just don't trust it's all this going to happen now. So, faded him as well.
Now, Blaney, as we said, he could end up as the favorite, and we understand why. He's got the Coke 400 win just a couple of years ago. He was 4th in this race last year, leading 36 laps. Runner-up in the Daytona 500 twice. He's got 2 Talladega wins. He's got an Xfinity Daytona win. He is just right now one of the best drivers at this racetrack, and he seems to be destined at some point to probably, and he's always got his Coke win, but I think he's one of these drivers that is more than likely either he's destined to win a 500 or two, or he'll be one of the drivers by the end of his career that you'll look at and go, how in the world has he never won a 500?
Yep, I feel like it just seems like this is his year, right? Winless last year, still makes it a round of 8. His last win came at Daytona in 2021, regular season finale. He just feel like he's on the cusp. He was burned by what he last year had in it. He felt he had the car to win, and his teammate blocked him. I feel like out of Penske, this is the guy to go. And I found some other Logano stats that I'll tie it into this. The last time a defending Cup champion won the Daytona 500, 2000, the Dale Jarrett guy again. It's only happened twice since 1978.
Another reason
that
the
defending Cup champion. So I'm like, why would he's the Mr. Trend himself. Every even numbered year he's in the championship 4 and he wins the championship. So if you just follow these trends, he's not winning Sunday. Blaney, since the start of the 2020 season, only Denny Hamlin has as many wins on super speedways as Ryan Blaney. Blaney tops everybody in average finishing position. He's the second most top 5, tied for the most top 10s, and also has the third most laps led in that span. The only thing he's missing is actually winning the race. I feel like you got Dale Earnhardt as a top speedway driver. Then it kind of evolved to Earnhardt Jr. Keselowski kind of took over for a while. Hamlin's probably got the king, the trophy now. I feel like Blaney's next. He's that good. I feel like he always seems to be there. He has 2 top 4 finishes in his last 3 Daytona 500s. It just seems fitting. He'd go winless and then start 2023 with a win. Truex went winless last year, won the Clash. Why not Blaney go winless last year and win the Daytona 500? And you're getting a good number on him at 12-1. I feel like that's to me right now. He's a Ford. So if the Ford trend, as Hamlin said, they got better. How do you get better than from finishing 4th last year? You're already right there. It's like, all right, if you get better, then you win. So if he can avoid the trouble,
that's it.
And we know he's my pick to win his duel tonight, and I think he can win the Daytona 500.
Well, that's the thing is, if he stays out of trouble, it's going to be hard for him not to win.
It is. The only thing is, I'll tie in the duel too real quick, because I know we're not really going to touch much on that because there's not much you can take away. I hope he doesn't win the duel tonight, only in this. The last driver to win a duel in the Daytona 500 the same year, Matt Kenseth in 2012. That's the only time in the last 18 years, and there's 5 times since 96, that the duel winners won the Daytona 500. So if you start taking these trends, no front row starters, no duel winners, stay clear of Joey Logano. You can steer clear of Austin Cindric. Hamlin is the only driver to win back-to-back Daytona 500 since 1994-95, Sterling Marlin. That's it. And then you had Kelly Yarborough in 93 and 94, or 83 and 84, and Richard Petty in 73 and 74. I'm not naive enough to think out of those names, Richard Petty, Kelly Yarborough, Cindric's going to join that list. So the trends are kind of showing you something here, and I feel like Blaney is that trend that he's the trendy pick for a reason.
You've invested your most money on him, and I've invested my most money on him this week. And by the way, you can get all of our totals on racereviewonline.net, including our fantasy teams. That's already been up there for the past week or so, as well as our futures, which have you posted the futures already?
I think so. I'll have to go look.
Futures
I think they're up there.
And
the next one will be
and we'll talk more about the futures on our show next week because we'll have a little bit more time in the beginning of the show. All right, and then by the way, speaking of Cindric, he's 20-1, which is I can understand his defending champ. And let's keep this in mind though. He's actually been pretty good at Daytona so far. Yeah. He's all top 15s and 2 top 5s, and he's got a win in the Xfinity Series at Daytona. So.
Yep. He's won. If it wasn't for that trend, because I felt like last year I followed more trends because this is a new car. I'm like, let's follow trends, and it led me to greener pastures. If it wasn't for that trend, I mean, he won this race. He was 3rd in the Coke Zero Sugar 400, and like you said, the Xfinity race he won. He technically has won the Speed Weeks race for 2 straight years. He won the Xfinity race in 21, the Daytona 500 last year. So that's other trying to say he could go three straight years with a win in speed weeks. Or does that occur in the duels? Maybe that occurs in the duels tonight, and but he's not a bad pick for 20-1. That's pretty good odds to get the defending winner of this race. It was 2 top 3s in this race last year. And remember, I think he was the top 10 at Talladega in one of the races last year.
So he'll be a good fantasy play.
100% be a great fantasy play.
Okay. Also, sticking with the Fords, so the Wood brothers, of course, that's Harrison Burton, and I'm the only one that put money on Burton, I think. So I did put a couple of bucks on him. He is on my fantasy team, so there's a reason for that. And he actually did well at Daytona in the Xfinity Series. So it would not be a surprise if that eventually moves over to Cup. Also, Stuart Haas. So Harvick could be his last Daytona 500. So you do have that going for you. And the fact that he is 25-1. That's a pretty nice number on Harvick. Now, the problem with Harvick is that he hasn't been the same Daytona driver for a while. Before this run of 2 top 10s in his last 13 and only 54 laps in his last 11 at Daytona, he was really up there as one of the better Daytona drivers. So something hasn't gone right, but he's a 500 champ, and it is his last 500, and he's 25-1.
And he's changed his approach, and that's what I like. It used to be the last few years because those stats, I just fade them. But then that's what's good about being in person and seeing it and talking to these drivers is I've noticed something, I've talked to them about it, and it's true, and this is the Stuart Haas guys, this is going to be their game plan. They're going to fall to the back. They don't care about stage points. They've done this the last several Daytona 500s is we just need to be there in the end. It doesn't matter the first 2 stages. Who cares about stage points in race 1? Let's be there in the end. And that's what Harvick has done. They faded, and then you're going to look in the final stage with about 20, 30 to go. There he's going to be. He did it last year. And remember, he was running the top 3 or 4. He got caught up in that wreck with Larson and Noah Gragson. And
it happens anyway sometimes. So.
It is. So it really doesn't matter. But at least he's there. And then 2 years before that, he was in the top 5. He did last to the end. He's got a Ford. His teammate Chase Briscoe was 3rd last year. Eric Almirola was 5th. So he was there. So I felt for 25-1, the sentimental favorite. Busch Light, they sent me a promo that I wrote about last week that if Kevin Harvick wins and he signed up, it's free to sign up. You got to be 21 or over. If he wins, they're going to draw out of the people that signed up. You're going to win $2 million. Wow. So it's free. So I'm like, well, why not take the odds of $2 million? So I signed up, had my wife sign up, and like, hey, if he wins 25-1, like we're going to bet on him too because why not for 25-1? It just seems like that. It's that sentimental feeling, right? And I wrote about this too. Is what is for this year? What's the story for the Daytona 500? Because we've had some good stories lately. 2017, Kurt Busch, first Daytona 500 win. It also happened to be Tony Stewart's first win as an owner. He was 0 for 18 or 19 in his career. First Daytona 500, he doesn't compete in. He's sitting on the pit box. They win. I thought that was a pretty good story. 2018, Austin Dillon takes the 3-car to victory lane 17 years later to the date of Dale Earnhardt dying. That 3-car goes to victory lane. 2019, Denny Hamlin wins a month after J.D. Gibbs, Joe Gibbs' other son, passed away. Denny Hamlin was really good friends with him. That's why he's the number 11. He wins the Daytona 500. 2020, we saw the Newman crash. Hamlin win again. That's a big story. 2021, Michael McDowell, 0 for 457. Wins the Daytona 500. Last year, Austin Cindric, rookie winner. Chase Briscoe went from sleeping on couches, almost quitting racing, to finishing 3rd. What is this year's story? I feel like the winner always picks it, or the Daytona always picks the winner, like Indy does. Kevin Harvick in his final Daytona 500 would be a hell of a story to win this race.
Maybe the other one is the driver we all have a pick on, and that's Eric Jones.
100%. He'd be another big one. Jimmy Johnson as his off. And Eric Jones was caught up in that same wreck with Kevin Harvick last year. He was running the top 5.
He looked good. He looked like he might have won that race. Yep.
Those are the type of drivers that they're not going to be the flashy. You might pick them and like, man, these guys told me to pick Eric Jones. He's 30th in the first stage. That's by design. I don't think they're going to get up there and mix it up. It doesn't help if you just got to be there in the end. And he's proven. He's won Daytona before. I go with guys that know how to win this race. Granted, he hasn't won this race. He won the 400, but he knows how to win on the super speedway. So, yeah, that's another great story if he can get a win. The 43 car with Richard Petty, the last win prior to Darlington, the 43 car, the Coke Zero Sugar 400 at Daytona. So,
yeah, he led 22 laps in the Coke race last year, most he's ever led. And he has a couple top fives at Talladega. And like you said, he's got the win at Daytona. So that's one of the long shots, as is the same. Jones is 30-1, just like a couple of Harvick's teammates, Preece Preece is 30-1. Briscoe is also 30-1. And you and I have Preece, and you and I have Briscoe. So Preece was a no-brainer for me hearing you guys talk about him as often as you did, especially when I looked at his numbers and saw that the last time he raced in the Cup Series in 2021, he finished 6th and 4th at Daytona.
Yeah.
So I was like, whoa, wait a second. Okay. So he's definitely in there then. Meanwhile, Briscoe, like you mentioned, 3rd in the race last year, has a couple top fives in the Xfinity Series at Daytona. So, yeah, those were a couple of those long shots at 30-1 that made a lot of sense.
And I feel like they're going to learn where I say don't take a lot from the duels you see tonight. The one thing that I will take is seeing how these three Stewart-Haas guys, Preece, Almirola, and Briscoe are on the same duel. So they can work together, and they can try out, like last year, the way Cindric beat Blaney was he tried that move in the duel on the last lap. They tried it, and it worked. These three can work together and learn something because their 500 is going to end under nighttime conditions on Sunday. The sun will be set. So you can learn your end of race moves. You're not going to learn setups, but you might learn some moves. Briscoe was there last year. They said Ryan Preece in 3 Daytona 500 starts had 2 top 10s with JTG. Now he's with a team that's probably going to say, hey, you 4 go right on back. You're going to be there in the end. He can do that. Almirola, he's won Talladega. He's won the Coke Zero Sugar 400. We saw how quick, again, Fords, they were good in qualifying last night. They've shown speed, and if they're going to race even better, you're getting 3 Stewart-Haas drivers for between 25 and 30-1.
You could just say, hey, I'm just taking those 4 drivers.
Yep, and one of them has a good shot at winning. Preece, to me, we talked about it last week. He's, to me, the Ross Chastain of the 2023 season. He's going to be that guy that's going to pop out of nowhere. What better start than win the Daytona 500?
Get it over with right away. Also, at this level here, we have Keselowski and Buescher teammates. And Buescher, I took Buescher, and CJ took Buescher. Interesting, as one of his long shots. And then CJ also, by the way, took Keselowski. So he took both of those drivers. And why not for Buescher? 5 top 10s, 3 top 5s in 14 races. That's pretty good for Buescher. So he's not usually that good statistically at any other track. He does have a runner-up in the Xfinity Series at the track. Keselowski, it is kind of strange to see Keselowski where he is as far as the odds are concerned. But look, the thing with Keselowski, of course, is just going to be, I don't know. Last year, I need to see something out of Keselowski this year that says that he's just going to be a different driver.
Yeah, because last year he led 67 laps. He won the duel, but he finished 9th. He was overly aggressive. And then he come back in August, and he was 35th. So it's like, what are they going to try to do? I feel like this year they need to be a little more conservative. They were overly aggressive. They won their duels up front, so I get it. But they started, other than that 9th place finish, it went all downhill from him from there. They need good finishes to accumulate points early. They don't want to get behind. So a good day for them might just be a pair of top 10s.
Yeah.
Instead of being as aggressive as you need to be to win. Granted, if you're there in the end, as Keselowski has said in the past, if I'm there in the end, I feel like you beat the lottery at that point. You don't know when you're going to be there.
And he's never won a 500.
No, that's the key is he's not won, and the series champions have just not done good there at Daytona. None of the last 12 points-paying Daytona races were won by a driver that has won a championship before.
Interesting. Yeah, because the thing with Keselowski was the fact that he's 18-1. I think he should also have been like Buescher at 30-1.
I would have snagged him at that. 18-1, that's why I went more on. I feel more comfortable with Blaney. Like I've always learned, too, over years of learning this betting thing is don't chase. Go with what you feel is right. And I feel like if at 18-1, I'd be chasing Keselowski, whereas I have a better feeling at Blaney. throw more money that way because trust your gut. And I trusted Blaney over because there's nothing about him that you look at all these, how good as he was at Talladega. You look at his entire career at Daytona, he's only won once. And it was in the Coke Zero Sugar.
And he only has 3 top 5s.
Yeah. So I just felt I'd be chasing him at 18-1 when he's the same odds as Bubba Wallace. He's got a couple runner-ups in his last 4 times. So I'm like, I'm going to go that direction.
Yeah, and before we talk about Wallace and those other and the other Chevys, you got to take a look at is it McDowell? You have McDowell, right?
McDowell. I do. Yeah.
Not Chevys. So we're going to talk about the Toyotas.
Yeah.
McDowell, as you said, that was the thing that kept me away from him. Is just come on, he's going to win twice. That's it. It's just, come on. I mean, that's just that might even be a big. To me, that's bigger odds than winning once. Of course, it is. I mean, it sounds like it. Maybe I sound stupid, but it's just some people are. No, if he's won before, that means he can win. No, I think that's even crazier to think. I could buy one. Two. I just can't buy it.
It would be hard. And I looked at his Daytona 500 finishes. 2018, he was 9th. 2019, he was 5th. 2021, he was 1st.
Good fantasy pick.
7th. Great at Talladega last year. Wasn't he runner-up, I think, in the fall race, or 2nd or 3rd? He was up front for that the fall race. And then the spring race, I think he had a top. I think he was top 10 all super speedways last year. So getting him for that number, to me, he's a comparison to Michael Waltrip. He went 0 for 463 before he won. McDowell was 0 for 357. So it's like they're kind of similar. Michael Waltrip won his races at Daytona.
It's a good point.
Maybe McDowell, but for 35-1, I'm like, that's right. You're getting almost double the number of what you're getting Keselowski for with the same amount of wins.
And you might be able to get better than 35-1. So
you probably could after the duels tonight. Because if I were them, I draft early. If you got a chance to win, go win. If you don't, maybe fade. Because if you got a good piece, you got a good car. You don't have the resources like these big teams have to rebuild it. Where keeping it one piece, if he doesn't finish the duel good, he's starting further back. Better odds our way. So, but for 35-1, an opening for him like that, I like it. I'd take it.
Also, as we mentioned with Wallace and his teammate Reddick, new teammate. So that should be interesting because, of course, we all took Wallace. He has 3 runner-ups in 11 races at Daytona. He's got a Talladega win. One of the runner-ups was in this race last year. The last 5 races, 11th, 2nd, 17th, and 5th. Very impressive. So he's a no-brainer. I'm the only one that took Reddick. The only thing that I was a little bit unsure of were the odds. He's a little, he's up there at 20-1, but he has 2 top 5s and a runner-up in his last 3 races at Daytona. He was runner-up in the Coke race, which was the last one, of course, last year at Daytona. And he crashed 4 times in 7 races over his career, but he's only crashed once in his last 4. So again, he's getting lucky. He was unlucky early. He's getting lucky again. And he does have a Daytona win in the Xfinity Series. So that's the reason why. And he's Wallace's teammate. So I figured, hey, if Wallace is going to be up there, chances are Reddick might be up there too.
And Reddick, he's one that he's seen those finding crashes. He's gotten better. Wallace, with the luck, he's Talladega, first win, rain delay. He came out of nowhere. He came in the middle, got the lead, and he was a deserving winner. He was going to probably be in a run for that if it ran full distance, but luck. And then 2 of his last 3 Daytona starts are runner-ups. And then I looked since 2020, the same span as I just gave the stats of Blaney and Hamlin, he's tied for the 3rd most top 5 finishes in that span. And the only 2 in front of him are Blaney and Hamlin. So, all right, well, if we're talking those 2 up here, and he's right, the only thing he's missing is a win. And he said runner-up last year to Cindric. I like what he's doing, and you get him for 18-1. That was, to me, a no-brainer.
You're getting better odds than Wallace than Larson.
I think he should be more up with the Kyle. He should probably be the 14-1 range. But and what's crazy enough is we know his stats. He was 15-1 for the Coke Zero Sugar 400 last year. That he finished 11th in. It's like he did terrible. And you're getting better odds, and nothing's changed. I'm like, well, of course. I don't know why they fell to me, but they fell to me, so let's take it. So, yeah, he's a strong play. for Daytona
And then
win.
with Joe Gibbs, you got Hamlin, of course. He's the big dog there. And you actually were that was the other favorite that you took, which again makes sense. If you're going to take two of the favorites, you go with Blaney and Hamlin. 11 top fives, 3 wins, 3 500 wins. But keep in mind, he did crash the last 2 races and has no top 10s in his last 3. It's kind of why I stayed away from him. I'm trying to stay away from the favorites in this luck race, and I just think that maybe he's at that point where he's now got a little bad luck on his side.
Yeah, and I went the sentimental thing for him too with 2019 getting that win. It was when J.D. Gibbs, like I talked about earlier, passed away. Well, Coy Gibbs, the other brother, passed away unexpectedly the night of the Cup finale in Phoenix last year. And the Gibbs fans been obviously reeling because of this. I mean, why would you not be grieving? That's a tough loss. And they keep saying, we're not going to make any statements over it. Let us grieve the process. 100% understandable. Well, Hamlin brought him a win last time. I feel like he's motivated to do it again. And we know his talent on super speedways. And you're giving me a guy that's won 3 Daytona 500 races, and he'd be one of, I think, 6 guys to win 4 more, or no, he's one of 6 guys.
He might have another.
Maybe one of 3 guys. And it'd be fitting to look back at the end of his career and be like, this dude has never won a championship, but he's tied for the second most Daytona 500 wins. And you get him for 12-1. I just feel like that's.
Yeah, Hamlin and Blaney should be 8-1.
That's what I feel. They some reason at the 12-1, there's absolutely no rhyme or reason why coming into this race, Kyle Larson should have the same odds as that 3 times. So while they say that, I am going to take it. I'm going to cash in as much as I can. That's why I went more his way.
Bell's another one that shouldn't even be 25-1. Bell, no top 10s in 6 Daytona races, crashed 4 out of 6. And only 1 top 10 in 6 Talladega races. He has not figured it out. Now, he's good in the Xfinity Series, so he's like Truex. He hasn't figured it out yet for whatever reason in the Cup Series. But until he figures it out, he should be 30 or 40-1. So, obviously, we all stayed away from Bell this week. And then Gibbs is just – there's no way you can take Gibbs because he's never raced in a Cup Series race before. But – hey, Cindric won last year, so I guess anything is possible. I guess the only thing, though, is that Cindric did race before he raced and won the 500. He had a previous start the year before.
That's where, and we'll segue a 50-1 here. I'll segue into that. There's only been 2 instances in 64 years that a driver making their first Daytona 500 start won the race. 1959, the inaugural race.
That doesn't count.
Lee Petty. And the second one was Trevor Bayne in 2011. Yeah. I'm not naive enough to think that all of a sudden. And that was,
what did it do? It was like, what is that?
Yeah. I just don't think Ty Gibbs is going to just join that list. A rookie, his counterpart this year, Noah Gragson, actually made the 500 last year. So that trend follows him.
Yeah, Gragson is actually a better choice than Gibbs.
Yes.
And matter of fact, we both picked him. Why not? 5th in the 400 race, crashed in the 500, and he does have a win in the Xfinity Series at Daytona. And he's always been good at this type of racing.
He 2020, he won the Xfinity race there. Last year, he was 3rd. He said he was 5th the last Cup race in Daytona with the Beard Motorsports team. He was 5th in the 400. He was in the race last year, so he has the experience. This car he's driving, Ty Dillon drove it to an 11th place finish last year. Mind you, he was running the top 10. Gragson, in my opinion, is a better than Ty Dillon. You're giving him that car. We saw what Eric Jones did as a teammate to him. Now you give him Jimmy Johnson as a teammate, who only helps the knowledge, and he's 50-1, which is the same odds that Austin Cindric opened up with last year before he dropped to 28-1 at race time. So at 50-1, it's a very similar counter as Austin Cindric was last year. He's technically a rookie in the series, but he's not a rookie in this race. I just feel like, again, another trendy pick. The trend favorite should be Blaney. The trend sleeper should be Noah Gragson.
Not just Jones, but Eric Jones. Not just Johnson, but Eric Jones.
Yeah.
So
you got
those are good teammates to have. He's got the extra one.
He knows how to win. Yep, he's won at Talladega. Gragson He knows how to get the victory lane on a super speedway. In fact, he won the 2022. So last year, the Xfinity race at Talladega, he won it. So I like if he can stay out of trouble, which again, some of these teams that don't have the budget yet of these big teams, they just ride in the back.
That's why you get a lot of long shots.
Yeah. So at 50-1, if he's there and he knows how to win, and he's in a car that was in 11th last year, I like those odds, especially if he has teammates at the end helping him. So I feel like he's the trendy sleeper pick right now. That's why I invested a little more on his way to win $200.
I'm the only one that took Haley and AJ Allmendinger. I'm actually surprised you did not take Allmendinger.
I almost did.
Because he's really been good in the Xfinity Series. The last couple of years, he's got 4 top 5s and 2 runner-ups. He's led 142 laps in his 6 Xfinity Series races in that span. He has not made a start in a Cup Series since 2018, and in his last 4 starts in the Cup Series, 3rd, 10th, and 8th. So I thought he was a no-brainer for me as a long shot, and I also thought Haley was. He's got a Coke 400 win, and he has 2 wins at Daytona in the Xfinity Series. So
yeah, Haley, I don't know why. I kind of was running out of money because I went the $5 on the 330-1 guy.
Yeah, I did $2 and $2. You went a little bit.
I went a little more. Those would be, I know it's not like Elliott. I think he'd be one of them if I want to put up. These would be the top 2 that like the best of the rest. They're the 2 because these are Haley's best tracks. He is Mr. Super Speedway. I feel like after Blaney, when he's going to become the Hamlin of it, Haley's going to be the next to take it. Haley is 5 of his 8 NASCAR wins, counting Cup and Xfinity, are on Super Speedways.
That's impressive.
His only Cup win is at Daytona. This is the Coke Zero Sugar 400.
And Bovada, by the way, I looked at it this morning, and that's why I put money on him this morning, 66-1.
Oh, even better. Oh, that's an even better. That's his first ever Daytona start in Cup. He won. He was 6th in the 2021 Coke Zero Sugar 400. So last night I don't look at their qualifying speed. That doesn't bother me. They have good race cars. Kaulig always does.
And you know what? That's probably why, because his odds were 40-1 the day before. They probably upped his odds because of the speed last night.
Qualifying, which is fantastic because that doesn't matter. And Allmendinger, he said his last Daytona 500, he raced in. He finished 3rd. And he mentioned, too, yesterday, the 2017-2018 season, 3rd, 8th, and 3rd, right in a row, he raced for JTG. He goes, those cars weren't necessarily capable of winning the race. This car is. I can win this race. So it's like, if he did that with that car, what's he going to do with this car? With the car with Kaulig that, as I just said, Haley, they provided him. He's one of the best super speedway racers in the game right now. Those are great odds to snag these 2. So, yeah, that would be the best of the rest for me. I would not be shocked if either one won. But Haley, the fact that it dropped down to 66-1, jump on that now. Because you never know what's going to happen in the duels. If they look at qualifying that close, if he runs well in the duels, it might drop back down to what it was before. But
absolutely.
66-1 right now, jump all over that because he can win this race.
And the last couple of drivers to mention, both of you guys put money on Austin Dillon. He's got 2 wins, including a 500 win. He won last year. The last race, Dillon won.
Sure.
So he's 25-1. And the other 2 drivers are Chastain and Kyle. Now, Chastain hasn't yet done well at Daytona, but he's got a Talladega win. So he's done well at Talladega, hasn't figured it out yet, but he crashed both of his times last year with the new car, which is really what made Chastain. So maybe he deserves the benefit of the doubt. The problem were the odds for me at 16-1. There's no way he should be at 16-1 based on his history at this track. He's crashed 5 times in 9 starts, including the last 3.
Yeah, he scares me at that. But he was 7th in 2021 to 500, so he just scares me of getting crashed. That's why I didn't go his way with this one, because I was scared. But Austin Dillon, as you said, won the 400. He was 3rd in this race in 2021. He won a duel that year. He's got Kyle Busch as a teammate. It just feels like for 25-1 when you get him at those odds. If I'm going to take Harvick, why would I not take the same guy? Or the same odds? So yeah, I feel like he's a good one. And his brother, as I mentioned earlier, 100-1,
150-1, Ty Dillon.
I'm sorry. 11th last year. And then you look at when he was with the Germain car, which was kind of tied to RCR, 6th, 6th, 4th. So if you really look at 4 of his last 7 Daytona starts, he's in the top 11. And he's driving that 77 car, which, oh, by the way, Justin Haley won in his first Cup race in. We talked about Corey LaJoie. I had to throw money on my boy Corey LaJoie because he's always up there. Ty Dillon is teammates with Corey LaJoie. So they're gonna have a similar car. So I couldn't neglect both. So I went with my boy LaJoie because you never know. We saw him almost win Atlanta last year, and he has really good Daytona 500 stats.
LaJoie?
8th in 2020, 9th in 2021. He also was 6th in the 400 in 2019, 14th in this race last year, and he's 100 to 1. So why not throw a couple bucks? You're not breaking the bank. If he wins, you're adding more to your bank. If you lose this, it's a couple bucks. So, but I do like those two as my longer.
And
shot.
the final driver that we're going to talk about is Kyle Busch. So yes, maybe we've waited for the best for last, but Kyle will be racing. It's an A car. There's no M&Ms. This is going to be a shock if people just haven't been figuring things out about what's going on there. But yeah, I mean, again, we've all taken him, and it's not just because it's Kyle. It's because look, he's raced well here. He's got the 2 top 10s last year, leading a combined 35 laps. The best 2 race results for Kyle since 2016, keeping in mind the new car last year. So maybe Kyle's just got something going now with this new car at Daytona. And maybe this is also more importantly, Kyle Busch has never won the Daytona 500.
It just feels, like I said, Blaney used to feel good. Kyle could be that story of Toyota. He's never won with Toyota. He's been close. He was runner-up in 2019. Then he went through a rough stretch, 6th last year, 10th in the 400. Now he's with Chevrolet. What if he wins his first Daytona 500 with a new man? He's outspoken. He'll probably mention, now you gave me some power. Now I won the race. It just seems like that would be mentioned that it'd be like winning the lottery. Austin Dillon won last year, the 400. He's won a duel. He's won a Daytona 500. Don't you think Kyle Busch is better than Austin Dillon? And you're giving him the same equipment. And we talked about Reddick was doing pretty good in that car, was getting better. Kyle Busch is in that car. Now, I can't stress that enough. I think it would be a major story if Kyle Busch was he 0 for 18 or 0 for 17, something like that. And I know it's in my article. I just don't have it pulled up in front of me. It'd be fitting his first Daytona 500 win comes with Richard Childress. I just think that would be – they have momentum. RCR was 2nd and 3rd in the clash. It just feels right. I don't know if he was that number with last year with Toyota, I'd avoid him. This year, for some reason, it's a good right.
number. Nothing wrong with 14 to 1. So, definitely getting better odds with Kyle Busch than Kyle Larson. We'll keep saying that. So,
which is baffling.
Shocking.
So baffling.
Yes.
But, yeah.
And before we go, though, top 3 picks. So is this going to be Blaney, Wallace?
I'd say Blaney, Wallace,
Kyle?
And Kyle, with my long shot being Gragson.
Okay, well, your top long shot, Gragson. I like it.
Yep.
Okay.
I just have a good feeling. I have a good feeling about all 4 of those, which I say that, and I would not be shocked if they all 4 are in the same wreck.
Yes, we know that. I'd probably go top long shot. I don't really. If you want to consider, and I probably, Hale or AJ, that kind of combo there, because they're 40 to 1. I probably, go with those 2 guys as top long shots. Okay, so next week it's Fontana. So, did they race at Fontana last year?
They did. It was the first year back since the pandemic. They didn't run there in 21.
How was it? Was it okay?
Better. It was a little rough because remember this was the start of all those spins because the next gen they didn't know how with the tire was blowing and they were getting stuck on the track. But the passing was good. They could finally pass again there. Kind of like the mile and a half was an improved show. You take the spins out. which again was the learning process of the car, I feel like it was much better than what we've seen. So
Okay.
I don't know why it would get worse. I expect a good race.
And by the way, out of the top matchups, this one seems like the easiest, and how could it not be when Kyle Larson's involved? But out of the head-to-head matchups, and they're all basically even, it's Kyle Larson or Chase Elliott.
Oh my goodness, that is a no-brainer. That is if you're going to bet anything other than the Justin Haley at 66-1 right now, I would jump all. There'd be no reason why Kyle Larson should beat Chase Elliott in the Daytona 500. At least Chase Elliott has a top 10 and has a top 5.
Yes. He has a few of them.
Yeah. Larson mentioned yesterday in his press conference that after he won the poll that he used to think it was luck the why he wasn't doing good, and then he really looked like, it's me. There's too much. It's not a luck thing. I'm just not good at it. He just mentioned that. And like, this is the guy that's where it pays to listen to our show, because we have that access to talk and listen to what these drivers say. He literally said yesterday he used to think it was luck. Here, I will, for our viewers, I'm going to find it real quick. I have the quote. I was part of this, and he literally admitted to this, and it was just last night, so we're not talking that long ago.
Last night.
And yeah, and this is his quote. I don't know. I mean, you always study before the race. I don't know. We do it every week. We go over every race, same as for Daytona and Talladega, both. We go and try to probably dive deeper than normal. More of the same tomorrow. But I would like to kind of see how the good guys set themselves up throughout a run to be up towards the front or whenever they need to be to miss wrecks and stuff. So he's saying, I would like to see. He still doesn't know. And I quote, "It's just a difficult style of racing that I don't know. I just haven't had the best of time in my career. I used to always say it's bad luck, but I don't necessarily feel that way anymore. Yeah, just to try to, as we do with every racetrack, just get better." Why is that? Well,
that sounds like he's real confident about the race on Sunday.
Yeah, and he's the co-favorite. Like, he literally just. But I've got Chase Elliott, who was runner-up 2 years ago. That is a no-brainer. If Chase Elliott doesn't get caught up in a wreck, he will beat Kyle Larson across that finish line.
Avoid the wreck.
But. Yeah, I just don't understand for a guy saying that. But that tells you, though, the odds makers don't know what – this is new to them, too. NASCAR is kind of booming with the betting.
But it's a name recognition, too, yes.
That's what they use.
Kyle Larson, and he must – he's going to get – because I would assume that there are a lot of gamblers out there that are not as educated, of course, and it's Kyle Larson. How can he not?
He's 12-1. How am I getting this? He's won 11 races in 2 years, and he's 12-1. That's a no-brainer. He's on the front row. But yeah, you've actually
and the front row thing was that put it together. That was it.
Yep.
That solidified.
That's why, folks, subscribe, watch, listen, whatever you need to do to the show, because we will steer you in the right direction. That is not the direction you. And granted, you'll probably win on Sunday, and we're like, well, I guess you were wrong,
right.
But. We have to know before the show, you look at his stats.
That's all it's about.
35 starts, 1 top 5. He's co-favorite. Denny Hamlin, 3 Daytona 500 wins. 1 more will tie him for second most ever at the same odds. Don't go for name recognition. Go for stats.
This is the place to be. That's why you want to subscribe. Never miss a show. Hope you like the video. If you do, like it. And also, of course, share it with your friends. We'd appreciate that. And if you have any questions or comments at all regarding anything we've talked about, anything we haven't talked about, you want to know something regarding the race, props that maybe there's we haven't talked about, you want our opinion on it, anything like that, let us know. And we are here to answer your questions. So we will, again, you are going to have the first IndyCar report previewing a race in the first week of March, correct? Okay.
Yes. Yep. Going to the St. Pete. So a couple. So we'll do Fontana next week, and the week after we'll do IndyCar and.
Matter of fact, our next motorsports show could very well be CJ talking about F1, because he'll be doing that next week, and I think he'll probably end up doing it before Thursday. And again, we're starting off on Thursdays. Normally we were doing it at the beginning of the week. It's either Tuesdays or Thursdays for us. So we're going to try Thursdays and see how it goes. And as long as we get enough traffic for Thursdays, and the odds, so that's the trick. We have to make sure the odds are available early enough on Monday for us to be prepared for the race on producing the show on Tuesday. So that's going to be the trick is if the odds are out early enough and we're not getting enough traffic because we're starting and producing the shows 2 days earlier, we'll switch back to Tuesdays. So I prefer Thursdays myself. There's a lot going on at the beginning of the week, but if we have to switch it, we'll switch it. So.
Yep, we'll evolve as we need. So,
all right, Great job. Appreciate it. Looking forward
Thank
to
you.
a great season talking NASCAR Cup with you. CJ will be along for the ride at some point talking Cup with us as well. And I'll talk to you next week.
Yep, sounds good. Talk to you then.